I'm running out of time, Elisabet. The land is dying. People are suffering. Soon, they'll starve. And the machines meant to help us are out of control.
Roll back the rock to the dawn of time, when the earth was smoking and the lava flowed. Roll back the rock to the dawn of time. You can blow your cool just like a volcano.
Yeah, imagine how different the game would have been if these were the dinosaurs that were in it instead. Anyway, we got another Horizon game, which makes sense because the first one was such a hit. I mean, really, how can you make something like robot dinosaurs not cool? I don't see how that could fail. I don't see how that could fail. But does Forbidden West do enough in its sophomore outing to warrant it getting nominated for Game of the Year? Well, that's what we're gonna answer today.
Machine kneecap, maybe?
Well, you'd need a filter.
Synthetic membrane would do it. With a hose to a
Compressed air capsule, hammer, and tongs.
What is this? What is happening here? What? Get over here.
The team behind Horizon, Guerrilla Games, has had quite a history thus far, going all the way back to 2001 when they were known as Lost Boys Games. It wasn't until 2004, after they became Guerrilla Games, that they received attention due to their Killzone game, which many believed was going to be a Halo killer. Yeah, that didn't happen. But that's okay, because 5 years later we got Killzone 2, which was a much better success, despite the E3 controversy of PlayStation thinking they could fool everyone into believing these were actual in-game graphics. Look. I know eventually these became in-game graphics for future consoles, but back then, yeah, that wasn't gonna happen. I mean, even my young naive mind was like, something doesn't seem right here. But enough about that, because after the well-received Killzone 3 and the not as well-received Killzone Shadowfall released, Guerrilla Games decided it was time for a change. It was time to shake things up. No more of this first-person shooter nonsense. They had an ace up their sleeve, and by God, they were going to use it. Robot dinosaurs. Horizon Zero Dawn released to some pretty dang good reviews. Its plot was intriguing, its characters were interesting, the combat was satisfying, it was nominated for Game of the Year, losing out to Breath of the Wild, and yes, of course, its robot dinosaurs were very cool indeed. Personally, I'm very much enjoying my run through this world. I found the gameplay loop to be very satisfying despite it being a formula that we had seen many times before. Sometimes you just need an interesting story and environment to get you engaged. Plus, I found myself wanting to complete a majority of the side content, which is not something I typically feel like doing with every game. So yes, Horizon Zero Dawn, despite its silly name, was worthy of its acclaim. But can Forbidden West match that same excitement? Generally speaking, on a second go-round, it takes a bit more than just having a cool idea to get people to come back. Yes, that includes robot dinosaurs.
Be on my way as soon as I wrap up some previous commitments, tie up some loose ends. After all, the welfare of Chainscrape's people in a transition like
Nope,
this...
you're leaving right now. Chainscrape will be just fine.
So, spoilers for the ending of Horizon Zero Dawn. That douchey guy you thought was good ends up being not very good, and ends up taking off with the main evil from the last game. He sets our hero Aloy to come find him in order to get answers about why he's doing what he's doing. This trail leads her to the titular Forbidden West, where we get the crux of our story. Funny enough, this entry plays out much like the Mass Effect games. Aloy has always been a lone wolf, mostly not by choice, but in this entry, a main focus is her letting others get closer to her to help. As such, you recruit various different new and returning characters to assist on her missions. Admittedly, that sounds cool, but there's two problems here. The first, I'll get into in the gameplay section. But for story, the biggest issue here is you don't get enough time with any one person to really build any real connection with them. At least, I didn't. You spend some time getting to know them and having them along on your quest, but once that's over, they typically stay at your base of operations until they're needed again, so you tend to lose interest in them after a while. This base of operations is also not introduced until about halfway through, so the second half feels a bit more rushed in terms of getting this crew all together. Worse is that the characters feel like they're growing while you're not there. They may dislike one another when first arriving, but as you move through the story and pay the base a visit, you'll see them starting to get along with only dialogue to tell you as to why. Great! Thanks for making me feel like the third wheel, Horizon. I'll just get out of your hair. Don't mind me. You build your bonds while I'm off fighting. Probably the biggest problem comes from the main plot trying to go bigger in terms of its shocking reveals, which, again, funny enough, also feels like it's borrowing from Mass Effect. I think a smaller story here would have sufficed, especially since the last one did go very big with its revelations, and I felt worked a lot better, but that's not to say it's bad. You kind of see what's coming, but not as to how it's coming, so that's something. But you just can't help but think of those high moments from the first one while playing. And that also kind of extends to the robot dinosaurs as well.
Petra? Aloy, what are you doing here? About time there was something worth looking at in this dump.
It's nice to see you too.
And not a moment too soon. Come on.
Similar to those iconic moments in the first Jurassic Park film, I will remember key parts of encountering these robotic creatures in the first Horizon. The first time I climbed on a tall neck, being hunted by a camouflage stalker, wondering how the hell I was going to take down one of those giant thunder jaws. All those moments are here, but since we've seen and experienced it before, they don't pack as much of a punch. That doesn't mean there aren't moments that still resonate with me though. I loved being in the process of taking down an enemy encampment only to be interrupted in the middle of it by a herd of claw striders, who proceed to wipe out the camp, and now I have to make sure I'm not spotted by one while I go for the key that one of the people killed had. I also hate, in the best way of course, the areas where you're underwater only to come face to face with a snap maw. If there was ever a moment that made me actually nervous in these games, it's definitely in these settings. I'm almost thankful they decided not to include shark enemies as well, because that would have definitely led to some embarrassing moments for me.
That is one big pile of shit.
Now, going back to what I said about the Mass Effect style recruiting and that first problem, I feel there could have been more of a connection with these characters if they just accompanied you on your travels. Apart from a few missions, they stay in the main base, and thus you feel the disconnect after a while. But if they had accompanied you and interacted with you and each other while out and about, that would have been much more interesting in terms of character growth and gameplay. Imagine fighting alongside each character and learning which ones had an advantage over which enemies. There is a deeper system hidden here that just needs to be refined. Given enough work, you could have something truly special that expands on what's already been built. One of the biggest complaints I heard when the game released was Aloy would comment on every little thing she saw or did, which made her annoying. I personally didn't feel the same, but that's because I tend to do the same thing myself. Time to relax. Maybe I can finally beat that game I've been wanting to play. Although, I guess I should masturbate. I don't get to do that enough. Oh, careful, Jan. You don't want to fall and crack your head open. Wouldn't that be a sight for the family? I love this material. Wonder what a gimp suit would feel like. But for those of you more normal than I, the accompanying companions might have limited Aloy's own little quips and instead been more meaningful interactions with her party, which in turn would have led to better character growth and more attachment when things started happening. I'm not even saying they all needed to be with you at all times, but at least letting you choose one or two to accompany you could have gone a long way. Again, similar to the whole Mass Effect thing. Also romancing the dinosaurs. Who wouldn't want to fuck a plow horn? I mean, it's in the name.
I'm not getting dragged further into this madness.
Hikaru ordered you to help me. You gonna defy him like that arrogant shit up there?
I enjoyed my time with Forbidden West. I can't say I liked it more than the first installment, but it's still a world that I wanted to explore and be present in. I feel the series has the potential to really blow us away with the third installment, especially if they expand on their system. But I can also see a world where Guerrilla Games rests on their laurels and just does the same thing again, since it worked well the last 2 times. I hope that's not the case, but I've seen it happen multiple times in the past with different companies, so I wouldn't be surprised if it happened here. Still, I don't want it to sully my experience of this game. Horizon Forbidden West is a fun game, one worthy of your time, which I can wholeheartedly recommend. That translates to me giving Horizon Forbidden West a 4 out of 5 with a recommendation to play it. If you liked the first, you'll like this one. And if you haven't played the first, I recommend you do so. Though you'll still get plenty of enjoyment, maybe even more so if you decide to dive into this one instead. Welcome back to Horizon Park. What's that? Come up with a better name? Them first. Anyways, yeah, Horizon Forbidden West. It's fun, and just like I said in my previous video, these have been going down in score with each one, so it's not looking too good for the next one. I guess come back and see if this ends up being a pattern. Until then, everybody, stay safe out there and have a good one.